Principles of Accounting 2, Chapter 7. In Chapter 7, we talk about activity-based costing. And activity-based costing is a costing method where we, instead of looking at how fixed overhead or our estimated overhead can be allocated using a single predetermined rate or a departmental rate, we separate costs based on certain activities. So we use it as a supplement to our costing decisions in order to make decisions about a lot of different things. It doesn't just replace our costing system, and there's some various reasons for that. So it's because in activity-based costing, we might also be looking at non-manufacturing costs under a cause and effect basis. So we know that the reason that this can't replace our traditional costing system is because our traditional costing system using absorption costing can only include manufacturing costs in our product costs. So how costs are treated under activity-based costing? So first we figure out what our activities are. And then we separate costs based on how those costs are used under those various activities. Traditional costing systems generally rely on either direct labor hours or machine hours to allocate all overhead products. Our direct labor and machine hours aren't always the best base because they're very quantity based. And quantity or number of products made, quantity of labor hours aren't always the best ways to look at how costs are used by companies. So under activity, it's based on actual resource usage of the cost instead of a quantity usage. So our main definitions are activity. This is an event that causes overhead resources. The activity cost pool, which is the cost bucket in which all of our costs are accumulated, and then our activity measure. So that's our allocation base. If you remember from chapters 1, 2, 3, and 5, that cost driver is what drives the cost. A transaction driver, this is a count of the number of times an activity occurs. And then we can also do duration, which is a measure of the amount of time needed for an activity. And when we start looking at an example on later slides, these terms will start to make more sense. We have 5 levels of activity: unit level, batch level, product level, customer level, and organization sustaining level. So we look at activities based on these kinds of levels. So an example of a unit level would be something that happens at the product level. For a batch level, this is something that happens for a very specific number of units. So a good example of understanding what a batch is if we were printing t-shirts and we had to replace black ink, so we used colored t-shirts and black ink. We have to replace the black ink every 100 shirts. Then a batch is 100 shirts because that's how many times we have to replace the color of ink. Or a batch can also be how many we produce in each design, and then we have to set up the machine to do a different design. That's an example of a batch. We have product level activities, which happen just at the product level, and then a customer level activity. In order to successfully create activity-based costing within an organization, we need really great management support. And the main reason for that is because activity-based costing takes a lot more time, effort, and record keeping. And so organizations that don't either have the resources and support or put the resources and support into implementing activity-based costing are going to struggle. We should also link to how people are evaluated and rewarded. So of course, we're more than likely to accept things and do them if we're being paid for them or rewarded for them than if we don't have an incentive to do them. And cross-functional teams should be created. So cross-functional teams are where we have team members from multiple different areas. So we could have one from production and one from accounting and one from marketing and one from. And the purpose for cross-functional teams and activity-based costing is because we need to know how activities drive costs. And we need a lot of different information and inputs in order to make those decisions. So having experts from different areas around the customer or from the company on our team helps us get all of the information that we need. So we have this organization that makes batteries, and we have information about their cost structure. So we have our income statement. We see here that this is the first operating loss this company has ever had. So they're going to start looking at the information, one, to try to figure out what caused a loss. They get an activity-based costing team together, and they select the following activity pools and activity measures. So they've decided that the activities that drive overhead costs within their organization are customer orders, product design changes, the order size, customer relations, and then they have an other category. The activity measure for each item is then listed. For customer orders, it's the number of customer orders. For design changes, the number of design changes. For order size, it's the number of machine hours that are used. And for customer relations, the number of active customers. Once we've decided what our activity cost pools and measures are, then we need to look at all of our costs and understand how they get separated into each of these cost pools. So we look at all of our costs. We see that we have costs from the production department, costs from administration, and costs from marketing. So remember, in activity-based costing, we mix manufacturing and non-manufacturing costs. This is a way to help us understand how these overhead costs and fixed costs are used by our daily activities. So we've decided that we break up by percentage. So we've decided that of our total indirect factory wages, 30% can be attributed to customer orders and design changes, 20% to order size, and 10% to customer relations and others. You can see that some activities get 0%. So, for example, we don't feel that the utilities or building lease or depreciation fall under customer orders or customer relations. However, a lot of the marketing department's costs end up under customer orders and customer relations. So once we have these percentages broken down, we start assigning our costs to the cost pools. So we've decided that 30% of our indirect factory wages goes to customer orders. So we take the total factory wages amount times 30%. And we get 1.8 million, and that goes into factory wages. So we would take every percentage that was in the last chart times the cost that we have here to get our total cost per pool. So you can see that that has been done in this chart. So we've assigned all of our costs. We now have cost pool totals for all 5 of our activities. Our next step is to calculate activity rates. So we determine that our total activities for each activity pool will be as follows. We'll have 10,000 customer orders, 4,000 design changes, 800,000 machine hours, and 2,000 customers served. So we break up the total costs by our activity to get an activity rate. So for customer orders, we've determined that our activity rate is 452 per order. Design changes, $760 per design change. Our order size is $6.50 per machine hour. And customer relations is $1,540 per customer. The other costs are organization sustaining costs and do not get assigned to products or customers. Similar to our segment analysis in Chapter 6, these would be considered common costs that are around all things and wouldn't be individually assigned to things. In the next video, we will look at assigning these activity rates to customers and products.